Hi there, Perennial Pride listeners. Thanks for joining me today. So, on this episode, I'm by myself, and we're going to cover an interesting topic. In a prior episode, I talked about avoiding the arrival syndrome, and it's a concept of hey, we already maybe have come to a point in our lives where we know enough or know everything we need to know to be successful, and that's certainly a fallacy from my perspective. But we can fall prey to that because we feel comfortable and we don't continue to learn and grow, and certainly that's going to stunt our ability to become all we can be, right, and contribute as much as we can, and certainly grow in our wealth. So, for that you're on here listening shows that you're not there. You don't have the arrival syndrome. You're willing to be open and learning more and continually on your educational journey. It doesn't certainly stop at school. And, as it relates to personal finances, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are unfortunately not literate financially because of the financial education is not really ingrained in our school systems. It isn't really taught well broadly. It's and it just filters through families and just continues to get perpetuated. And then we, get the marketing engines of financial institutions, banks, you have it, of saying this is how it's supposed to be done. And it's just a shame. And when you look at across the country, and someone across this one study, and it talks about kind of where people are financially in terms of how strong they feel about their finances. And unfortunately, it's for the majority of families in America, and adults specifically, they're financially anxious. That's because they don't feel they have control of what's happening. They don't feel confident in what they're doing. They don't feel empowered to know that what they're doing is the best. And so they struggle. And certainly in people who are younger, it's even worse because they're still kind of figuring things out and may be reeling from some mistakes earlier on. And so you have the majority of adults in America that don't feel confident in what they're doing, and it causes them other stress. That's why a lot of, whether your finances are in order or not, it really hits on other areas of life. And so they're all connected. And so this anxiety probably filters into other negative things in our lives. And so it's a bad thing, clearly. And so we have cases where people don't have emergency funds and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're on this perpetual hamster wheel and they can't get ahead and gain the financial freedom in their lives, right? Money isn't everything, but it certainly helps to provide the resources to help you live the life you really want. And that's ultimately what I think most people want. As opposed to being down in these stressful moments and worrying about just being able to pay the bills and let alone think about retirement. So I did get recommended to watch this one Netflix documentary called Get Smart with Money. And so I like the name of that, right? It's about trying to get some education. And I think at least getting some focus on that is good. I may or may not agree with all of it, but again, at least there's some education going on and helping people to think more broadly around their finances. And hopefully it's something that they can adopt and to empower them to make the best choices for their situations and their priorities. We're often sort of taught that, hey, there's all these financial experts that know better than everyone, and just hand them your money and, hopefully everything works out. And, finance is so complicated. Most individuals can't do it. Yeah, there are certain complicated areas in finance for sure. However, there's a ton of basic things and foundational things that people can easily learn about if they're open-minded about it and willing to not be in that arrival syndrome mode. So I thought I'd share just some thoughts around what I gathered from this Get Smart with Money documentary. And really, I like the way that they set it up. It was centered around 4 different case studies of individuals and their situations, and they gave a coach coach was there to help guide them through, give them some tips, and then allow them to take some action and see how they sort of progressed. So I'm just going to go quickly through a couple of or actually I'll go through all of them and share you what the situation was and what were some advice, and then I'll just give just my 2 cents on them and share them, because there's a lot of good and some things that I think might need some enhancing. So the first one was interesting. It was an NFL professional football player and a young guy in his 20s. He was on a team, and then he got cut because he got injured, and he's now going back to try out for new teams. So he had made a lot of money through his initial contract, for someone who grew up with no money and was handed well over in the 7 figures. And as you would imagine, when you give someone that money and they haven't really learned much about finances, what do you expect happens? Well, he starts buying things and using them and thinking, more money's coming. And, the large bonus money and the money from the contract, a lot of it whittles away, and then he gets hurt, and then the income stops. And big chunk of the money that he got is now no longer in his possession and isn't working for him. And so that was the kind of current state. So he's trying to get onto a new team, and he starts growing his income again. And so he meets with the coach. And so in the midst of seeing if he made the team to resume his income, just about the only advice that was provided around this is to start investing in the S&P 500. Open up a brokerage account and keep on putting money into that. And, in due time, you're going to have so much money, you can retire and do whatever you want, 20 years down the road or whatever amount it was. So assuming some whatever magical rate of return in there that's supposed to be there. So, and that was the extent of the advice. Now, granted, I believe, yes, it's good to be thinking about investing, and we all need to invest in certain things. But in this situation, here's an area of, the football player had no understanding of it. He said he just didn't feel comfortable with it, and he didn't have any knowledge of it. But the coach is saying, just do it, and you're pretty much guaranteed to have this money down the road, and you'll be really wealthy, and just keep on going, just blindly throw it in. And certainly the NFL player was hesitant, but he started doing it. And here we are in a world where investing in something that, one, this person doesn't even know about. He doesn't understand it that well. And so he's getting encouraged to put a lot more money into this thing, assuming that someday down the road it's going to materialize into something that you can use. And it's quite amazing, because to me, investing in something that you don't understand is more like gambling in my mind, right? In our world, when we think about investing, hopefully it's in things that you understand and know about and have some level of control over. And in this situation, it's just putting it into something that he doesn't even know these companies, doesn't know how they operate, doesn't understand the financials of them. It's 500 random companies that he knows a little bit about. So it was just, to me, not an appropriate approach, especially for this type of person that the income is not going to be steady. And obviously football players have a short window to make money for the vast majority of them. And here you're in a dangerous sport. So this is why we always talk about trying to build up both sides of our financial lives. One is the protection side of things, whether it's death and disability. Here, this young man had a young daughter, obviously a wife, who wasn't working time. And so a lot to protect and a lot of uncertainty. So making sure you have liquid money that you're just saving somewhere, get into a consistent habit of saving. Here, you just got to put them in the road of consistent investing. And so to me, there's a lot of exposure to this family, and it was all about investing, and that's all you needed to do. So I know, maybe there was more to it in the coaching off camera, but this was all that was shared, right? Just invest in S&P and everything else is solved. So in the end, I think they got at least him aware of the importance of thinking about his financial future. So I thought that was really good. Got him aware that, hey, there's a short window here to make a lot decent money in the NFL. And so you got to take advantage of it, use your money wisely and put it in places. So I think in the end, that was really a good thing that came out of it too, is this gentleman realized that he couldn't be wasteful with his money, and he had to kind of start thinking about where to put it. So I thought that was good. That was good in the end. So we'll see how that goes in the future. And this is filmed a couple of years ago, but so that's the first use case. So again, back to the typical financial advice, just throw into things that you don't control, and you kind of hope and pray that it works out. So the second scenario was centered around a young family who was doing well. I think the husband had gotten let go and struggling to get a job. The wife had started up a very business, and it was becoming successful and growing. But they had two young kids, and a pretty expensive lifestyle with their house, just like what happens in life when you start building up income. And it's a lot of times your expenses follow that. And I think that was what was happening to this family, that they weren't able to save as much as they would have liked, because their expenses were really high and they were growing. And certainly we understand that with kids and things can get very expensive, but we're trying to also maintain a lifestyle that this society assumes we should be striving for. So the coach was good at help them figure out maybe to reduce some of their expenditures, really focus on what are the expenditures that really mattered most for them based on what they were trying to do. And one of the things that they wanted to do was retire early. There's this movement, the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. And I'm not a big prescriber into that. I think, we're put on this earth for whatever window we're allowed to be on here. And my thought is we should be producing something, providing value to others, not just piling a bunch of money and kind of living on the beach and kind of doing nothing. So again, this family wasn't thinking that way. They wanted to be able to have more time with their family, maybe do some stuff. I think they took a month-long vacation in Costa Rica with family, which again, these are good things. Time with family is great, and it's very important to be able to enjoy that. Not just work all the time. So, but their goal was really to expedite that, and so they can just live off their money. And so, it didn't really go into far down the road what they would do after they got retired. But so, to me, it's just not something I'm subscribe to. But, they reduced their costs, they downsized their home, and they started to save more. And so ultimately that was a good thing. It was really good. It reduced their overhead, and they could save more, so they could build wealth faster. And again, similar to the first individual, it was just put into index funds, just put it into the stock market. That was essentially the investment that they were going to have. Obviously, I would love for them to maybe thought about investing more in the business, which could elevate and escalate their income and help them save more too, since it was already being successful. I said, maybe that's a place where you have more ownership and control what's happening. So, I didn't really talk too much about that. It was just kind of, let's throw it into, the market, and, it's essentially a guarantee that's going to be there and useful. So to me, it's just, again, some of the typical advice you're going to hear, not to say that stock market isn't a viable option, but certainly they were so successful in their business. Why not put more there if there was opportunities that were there? So in the end, they were, migrating towards saving more and looking to hopefully retire in less than 10 years so they can spend more time with family and just kind of slow down a bit. And so retire early. As long as you retire into something else and something maybe more passionate for you, then I think that's great. But to retire for retirement's sake, I'm just not in that camp. So the third scenario was a young couple in their 20s. And this is one that I think this is happening more and more across this country than I would want to believe, but it does, where this woman had amassed nearly $60,000 or $70,000 of credit card debt, top of student loan debt and just swimming in debt and interest payments to banks. And we talk about this often, where, a lot of our biggest expense, or two biggest expenses in the world, are interest to financial institutions and taxes for a lot of people. So in this case, it was really focused on too much debt and bad debt, not producing much in terms of income, because it wasn't associated with assets. It was just spending. And so they were just causing massive anxiety. As I kind of went to the beginning of this podcast, it was putting so much stress on their lives, and they're barely able to live paycheck to paycheck, and certainly weren't able to save anything. So the coach that came in really said, you've got to get more aware of your cash flow. And I think that's a key. That is big. I'm not a big budgeter, but I do recognize the need for people to understand broadly where their cash flow is going, so they can determine if it's the best use of those dollars. So for this couple, they really need to get down to basics, like where is the money going, and how do I maybe automate some of the income so it gets put into buckets for certain spending to help this woman sort of stay on track and reduce some of her spending, when she was obviously overspending and not being wise on where her dollars were going. So ultimately, it really was helpful. And for that situation was good. It just got her, noticing where her money's going and paying down the bad debt that she was accruing. And, at the end, I think paid down like $50,000 of it. And by the end, I think they had paid the vast majority of it off, all of the bad debt. And she still maintained some educational loan debt, but at least that was at much lower interest rates and more manageable. And so she could start saving some money just for themselves, right? Having emergency funds. And they had that situation where they had a car that broke down and they had emergency money set aside to fix it. So, these are all things that seem so basic, but something that sometimes are difficult to do until you can really focus on knowing where the dollars are going and putting in sort of ways to minimize the waste that might be happening or overspending that's occurring. So overall, I thought it was good, and it was really inspiring to see this person just really get a better handle on their debt and their money and their spending habits, and thinking about their futures. And thankfully, they were young enough that it could be some significant benefit long run of this for their lives and for the daughter. I think they had a daughter that they were raising. So hopefully it gets them on the right foot to start saving money somewhere and having that cushion, and then really start thinking about investing. And that's the next stage of it. And so I'm glad it didn't migrate to there first. Got down to storing cash and finding better places for it. So the last one was an interesting one. It was a younger woman in the service industry in a I think a restaurant, a waitress or something and that nature, and not loving it, and it wasn't getting fulfillment, a lot of bad hours, and money was okay but not great, and so the course of this, it was interesting because it reflected a lot on her own world, like that she was getting older and didn't feel like she was being productive or certainly not following her passions. She went to art school and design school, and so she never really did a lot with that. And so this was really good because the coach really helped her think through maybe alternatives, ways to build wealth and create income that maybe more aligns to her passions in her interest. And a lot of that was experimenting. She tried some things out in terms of doing artwork, and she ended up painting murals, and she also teamed up with this a clothes designer to help with him. So she was getting into these entrepreneurial efforts to explore things that really brought her energy and motivation. And it just so happened it was starting to bring her even more money. And, this is a really good sort of, and it wasn't easy. Certainly you were watching this, it was tough because she was trying to remove herself from the areas of her work that were not serving her, but she still had to, live and eat and all those things. So that is a challenge and for entrepreneurs. So she was able to overcome it. Each step forward gave her a little bit more confidence to continue forward. And so really, it was really great to see, this individual kind of start getting into their own world as a business owner, entrepreneur, and really hustling and being creative on how to create cash flow and start actually saving money and seeing how that was building over time. That she had saved some like thousands of dollars. She'd never done that in her life. And so it was really cool to see. And it was focused in investing in herself and her business and something that she knew a lot more about. And certainly business, she was learning it and throughout the course of it, but working in areas that she had more expertise and knowledge. And that to me was investing in herself, investing in a business that she could own and control. So it was really a good area. And I think a good transition for her to realize. And I think it just built a lot of confidence and just pure satisfaction that she was in her space, right? Working in something that she felt so passionate about and could leverage the things she was already good at. And so she would just continue on from there. So, that was a really good story. It was, but it showed the emotional toll that, not having financial direction or confidence can really do for people. And, she went through some roller coaster aspects of it, but I think she's well on her way to building a tremendous life and having a business and income source that can support it. So those are the four. It's kind of unique sort of groups of scenarios, but I thought they did a good job of it. I mean, obviously it was not a long documentary, but and finances can be very broad and complicated. So everyone's situation is unique, and that's the beauty of this. Is why I love it called personal finance. We can take different sorts of information and it can empower us to sort of create our own path and see what's right for us and what fits us and what makes us fulfilled and what we want based on what we're trying to achieve in life and our priorities. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to kind of watch it, Get Smart with Money on Netflix, and certainly put some comments in this one if you did watch it, like what you thought about it, anything that stood out to you, and hopefully some of the nuggets I share with you were helpful to help you gain more control and freedom of your own wealth and hopefully get smart with your own money. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Perennial Pride Podcast.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride Podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.